me right now is the former Speaker of the House, author of most recently of Understanding Trump, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
It's great to be with you and to hear about this pound-a-day diet. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Don Peoples is on this high-protein diet, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But, Speaker, your thoughts on this potentially tying the Harvey aid bill to an increase in the debt ceiling?
Well, if I understand Secretary Mnuchin's point, they run out of money. They run out of legal ability to borrow money sometime in the next couple of weeks. So to pass the appropriation without passing the debt ceiling increase would mean it wouldn't mean anything, because they literally couldn't access the money. In effect, it would be locked up at the bank. And I think the easiest single vote in the Congress would be to tie the debt relief to the debt ceiling, get it done in one single vote. I think it would pass by an overwhelming bipartisan majority. There are not going to be very many people after the devastation of Harvey who are going to vote no on getting that aid money to the people of Louisiana and Texas.
I would think not. But let me ask you about tax reform, Newt, because the president is headed to North Dakota today to be part of this push for tax reform. He'll be accompanied on the trip by North Dakota's Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp, who faces a re-election in a state Trump won by 36 percentage points. What's your sense of tax reform at this point? And is this the start of the president reaching out to Democrats to try to get this done? I think it's worth noting that we just heard Mitch McConnell on the floor yesterday say the president's priority are as follows: keeping the government funded, the aid for Harvey, et cetera. He didn't even mention tax reform.
Well, I think that Senator McConnell was referring to between now and the end of September. Certainly the president's plan, I think, will probably move through the Ways and Means Committee in the House in September and probably move through Senate Finance in October. And hopefully, I certainly think the goal should be to get it signed by Thanksgiving. I really like the way the president said it yesterday, because I think that the key, back to my years as a junior member when Ronald Reagan was president, the key to economic growth at this point is to combine cutting red tape, which the president's doing, with cutting taxes. And as he said, this is about tax reform, but even more importantly, it's about tax cuts. Tax cuts for the middle class, tax cuts for small business. I think that's the right formula, and I'm delighted to see him do it.
But it has to be about tax cuts at this point, right, Speaker? They have 11 days left. How are they going to actually debate which deductions to take away and which to leave?
No.
They only have a few days.
No, the 11 days is just September. I mean, in September, what they've got to do is keep the government open, deal with the debt ceiling, deal with the emergency relief. If they do those things in September, remember, the committees, meanwhile, can be writing the tax bill. I know for a fact that both the Ways and Means and Finance committees, along with the senior leadership in the White House, they've been working for months on this thing. They're not starting from ground zero. They're starting with a pretty good idea of the architecture of the bill they want. And I think that one of the keys to it is the president reaching out to Democrats exactly the way you should. He's got Democrats in a whole series of Trump states who are potentially vulnerable next year, and he ought to go into every one of those states, invite the Democrat to go with him, and say, look, do you want lower taxes for the people of Missouri or Indiana or Montana? You can go down the list. I think a lot of those Democrats would suddenly find themselves under great pressure back home, not from Donald Trump, but pressure from the voters back home who want lower taxes.
All right, so your feeling is it's 11 days that they have, but they're going to be funding the government, making sure the government stays open, and doing the Harvey relief in that 11 days, but they have a little more wiggle room when it comes to the tax plan.
Oh, yeah. They have all of October and a good bit of November to get this done.
And then the DACA situation comes up, right? I mean, there's an op-ed in the Journal today basically saying, in the list of important things and problems that the U.S. is facing right now, young people who were brought to this country when they were infants is not one of the big problems. Why are we dealing with this now? Your thoughts on DACA?
Well, we're dealing with it now. First of all, I think the president was remarkably wise in how he structured this. And I know that President Trump spent 2 solid weeks trying to think through how to solve this. It's clear that the DACA decision by President Obama was unconstitutional. He reached way beyond the law, and you can't have a president who thinks that they have the ability to rewrite law without Congress. So it's unconstitutional. On the other hand, it's clear that as a matter of compassion that you can't just knock 700,000 young people and change their lives decisively with no recourse. So what President Trump has done is he said, look, we're going to enforce the law, but we're going to have a period here for Congress to fix this, to make it legal, to combine the Constitution and compassion. And I would say to whoever wrote that article, it's clear that they're not one of those young people. They're not one of the relatives of those young people. They're not one of the people who worships with them or works with them. It's pretty hard-hearted to say that the fate of 700,000 Americans or American residents who came here as children, that those young people don't count. Of course Congress ought to deal with that. But again, Congress is a big institution. It's got 535 members. It's got dozens of committees. You can be handling DACA in the Judiciary Committees while you're handling tax cuts in the Revenue and the Finance and Ways and Means Committees. I mean, these things are they're not either or. The nature of Congress is you ought to be able to get both of them done by Christmas.
And you think they can do that?
My guess is, knowing the nature of Congress, they will meet the March 5th deadline by about 2 weeks. But they would be wise to try to get DACA done, and frankly, to get the wall funded and to get a couple of other fixes on the immigration system. Remember, the country is overwhelmingly in favor of what President Trump is doing to go after MS-13 gang members from El Salvador, to go after the sanctuary cities, which have an insane proposition, to go after Kate's Law for those people who come back to the U.S. after they're deported. I mean, the country wants substantial changes, and as part of that, about 75% of the country believes young people who came to the U.S., who've lived their whole life in the U.S., should not be deported. That's a piece of a larger package, and I think can probably be passed by Christmas if we get lucky.
Yeah,